All right, everybody. Pat Leonard here from the New York Daily News. This is the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard post-game live podcast from MetLife Stadium here. It is midnight, August 22nd, after the Giants finished an undefeated preseason. That's right, an undefeated preseason. Then they do it in style. 42-10 over the New England Patriots, absolutely putting it on them. Capped by Tommy DeVito in the second half, 17 of 20, 198 yards, and 3 touchdown passes for Tommy Cutlets, who you would expect is either going to be on another team or on the Giants practice squad soon, because it is that time of year, everybody. Coming this next Tuesday, the Giants need to make their roster cuts, their decisions to get down to the 53-man roster. Now, as we always discuss at this time of year, this is only the initial 53-man roster. The Giants will still have mechanisms to improve their roster, as will all the other 31 clubs around the league. You could make trades, waiver claims the day following the cuts league-wide, where the Giants have their scouts scouring the league for potential upgrades to pluck as the third team in the waiver order, because it's the same order as the NFL draft order. The Giants picked number 3 overall. They have the third number in the claim order. So they have near priority for players that they wish to add. Of course, any player that you go out and get, you have to subtract 1 from somebody that you have in the building. So that's what we're going to do here tonight. I'm going to discuss my 53-man roster projections with all of you. And I look forward to bouncing our ideas back and forth on how that will help the roster shape. I did submit a 53-man roster to the New York Daily News prior to this game. You always see a handful of things on the field that either make you reconsider some of the things that and decisions that you made, or on the opposite side of things, reinforces what you believe in what is coming down the pike for certain players, whether they're draft picks, whether they are rookies, whether they're veterans still clinging on, trying to go 1 or 2 more years. So I'm really looking forward to talking that out with you guys here. I am at MetLife Stadium, coming out of the locker room after talking to Jackson Dart, talking to Tommy DeVito, talking to all the players in the locker rooms, going into the defensive room, and talking to guys like Art Green, Paulson Adebo. Of course, a lot happened tonight. We had Jackson Dart making his first start as a Giant. We had his touchdown pass. We had his fumble. We had him getting pulled out of the game. One of his money quotes after the game was, "I've never been pulled out of a game before because I had the wind knocked out of me." He was pissed that he got pulled out of this game. Of course, the NFL doing its job with concussion spotters, trying to take care of players. You know, to be honest, I always feel like there's always something in as far as player safety that is missed in that regard. So I always love seeing when it's prioritized like it was in this case. But obviously the players, especially Jackson Dart in that moment, he said he was assuring the referees that he was okay, but they prioritized the safety. Jameis Winston pops in, throws a touchdown pass, and basically everybody got in on the action tonight. But I'm going to take your questions as well. I'm going to jump to them next. Just want to remind you, very grateful to all of our sponsors here tonight: My Bookie, Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, and Salaretta for Men in Midland Park, New Jersey. I always ask you to support the podcast, whether it's just by listening or viewing on the YouTube channel, PL on NFL, or an Apple or Spotify podcast audio. Sometimes it's by purchasing a super chat or super sticker. If you buy a super chat or super sticker, you get elevated to the top of the queue, and I address or answer your comments or questions first. But another way I ask that you support, if you love the content that you get here, and remember, I am covering the NFL daily, the Giants daily. I'm in the building. This is something that not a lot of people are doing, this type of access direct to you guys, the fans, the diehards, the people who help us grow this conversation and community. So remember to please support our sponsors, because that is the best way to support Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard. We will do a Hooks, Rubs, and Spices Giants trivia question tonight, so stay tuned for that. We'll have a special giveaway, as we've had many of our last several chats. Looking forward to that. But just real quick reminder, Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink. You're going to go to boomchaga.com and use the code TalkinBall25. That's where you're going to find a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can put it in your coffee, your tea, water. Boom Chaga now makes cold teas. It's going to fuel your body with nature's best. Feel the difference now at boomchaga.com. Also, it is about that time. It's time to start picking your Super Bowl futures, picking your division winners, and putting your money where your mouth is when it comes to who's going to be the MVP this season. Where are the Giants going to finish in the NFC East? You're going to want to do that with MyBookie. It's the only place where you can find a plethora of offerings, both in the NFL betting world, sports books in general, and of course on the casino. That is where you're going to love to spend time back and forth. They have so many unique games to play as well. There's a lot of sports books out there, but MyBookie has so much more, from WWE to UFC. And as I said, NFL and all the major sports, but also games like the Money Bag, Partner Picks, Daily Bet Boosts. You're going to go to mybookie.ag, use the code Leonard. That's my last name, Leonard. 50% deposit bonus there, redeemable all the way up to $1,000 in bonus funds if you use my code. That is MyBookie. Go to MyBookie today. Also, last but not least, Saloretta for Men. Like I said, they keep me looking fresh for all my arrivals. If you want to look nice, want to look good for a formal event, a wedding, personal, professional, whatever it is, Saloretta is going to get you there. You know, winter, fall, spring, and summer, no matter what. And of course, as I said, Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, our buddy Jared, owned and operated by Jared. He's a Giants fan, a diehard from Houston. Hooks, Rubs, and Spices gives your grill serious flavor with a bold seasoning lineup. It's all natural, no junk, big Texas barbecue flavor to keep fans coming back for seconds. Whether you're putting it on wings, nachos, flat top burgers, ribs, brisket sandwiches. Jared has a reel up right now on Instagram that made my mouth water, man. A brisket sandwich that was absolutely to die for. I think he threw some slaw on top. So listen, go to hooksrub.com, use the code Talkin Ball at checkout for a 15% discount. He's got great swag too. It's not just the product. He's got great swag. All right, without further ado, let's get into your questions and comments. Thank you so much for being patient. Thank you so much for being here. You guys are what makes this go. All right, Joey B checks in, says, man, this feels great. It's only preseason, but it feels good. Prayers for TJ Moore. He was balling. Hey, Hooks, I can't wait to get the rub and use it this weekend. What's the best meat to use it on? We are back. Love it, Joey B. Yes, prayers up to TJ Moore indeed. Undrafted rookie out of Mercer. Had a pick six in this game, and the Giants sideline, as you could see, was riled up for just about everything tonight. A lot of celebrating, a lot of camaraderie, a lot of excitement, of course, a lot of points on the board. That's what that's going to bring. And so it was really unfortunate after Moore made such a great play to then see him go down on special teams coverage. His right leg was twisted in a really ugly position. Seeing it live was really difficult. You saw the scene on the field with all the players surrounding him, lifting him onto the cart, and he was taken in an ambulance to a local hospital with his family following right behind. So the Giants were taking good care of him, but scary situation and a reminder, you know, of how dangerous this game really is and the risk that these young men are all taking when they play this violent sport that we all love to watch and we all love to talk about and we're so passionate about. Joey B, thank you so much for the support, man. You're always supporting us, always supporting me. The absolute man, you know, came to the Talkin Ball meetup in Pittsburgh last season when we were in town for Giants Steelers. You know, one of the best. You guys all got to support Joey B. Go to his shows. He's a hilarious comedian. Runs a barbershop. I mean, the man does it all. He's going to be the fan of the year. We're going to get him fan of the year because he deserves it. So thank you, Joey B. Thanks for getting us started with that question. Patrick Evans says, hit that sub and like button. Thank you, Patrick. Hunter says, good evening. I may be the only person, but I think they should cut trade Singletary, carry Tracy, Cam, Scattaboo, and Turbo. Also, Hyatt needs to go. His 2 drops were the stick that broke the camel's back. You think Bo or Gunner deserve that spot? Get to that in a quick second. Hooks, Rubs, and Spices also adds, what's up, Pat and chat? What a performance again. We got that juice again. Definitely think Turbo gets a spot. Then Fedone or Dolcic can't be cut. I still think Hyatt and feel he is the type of player that performs well with confidence. So the touchdown he had from Jameis will provide some of that. Tough calls on cut day. We are going to see some guys we all love get cut, and hopefully we can bring some back to the practice squad. Barb adds Dulcich and Fedone are keepers. All right, so you guys are leading me very well and very adeptly into our 53-man roster projection chat. So let's start with the offense. I'm starting by keeping – so these are my predictions as of this moment. Things obviously could change, and I could be wrong. But I have 3 quarterbacks making the roster: Russell Wilson, Jackson Dart, Jameis Winston. I have Tommy DeVito getting cut and either returning to the practice squad or choosing to seek employment elsewhere. Don't know where there would be a fit where he would see a dramatically improved chance of playing and contributing. Remember, this is, him being the local guy here and fostering the following that he has everything to do with, catching lightning in a bottle when he did, but also where he did it, right? Locally, like where he's from, a fan base that rallied around him. And so it'll be interesting to see what he decides, assuming the Giants don't keep 4 quarterbacks, because it's really impossible to see that happening. Obviously, the Giants want to see if they can get something for DeVito in a trade. They've been pushing that all summer, and DeVito certainly helped their cause if they're trying to do that with 17 for 20 for 198 and 3 touchdowns. Still hard to believe they could get anything for him in a deal, but that is where that stands. So I got 3 quarterbacks. Running backs, here's what I'm doing. As of Tuesday. So remember, teams could establish their 53-man, with an initial cut, and then they can make decisions from there. There could be a trade after that. My initial 53, I'm keeping 4 running backs. I'm keeping Tracy, Scattaboo, Singletary, and Turbo. Remember, Turbo was on his way to possibly cracking the roster last year and hurt his hamstring in camp. This is the 2nd straight year he's had a strong camp. So I would give him the call, especially since Scattaboo, even though he played a little bit in this game, now by the time they play Washington in week 1, maybe he'll be closer to 100%. He blew out of the locker room tonight. He left the locker room and the stadium before we even got a chance to get in and talk to him. So that was disappointing. But, there's 2 weeks before they have to play or so before that regular season opener. So he could be ready by then, but maybe keeping Miller gives you a little bit of insurance with Scattaboo either on the shelf or working his way back. Now, one thing that did not help Turbo Miller in this game was the muffed punt, where he inadvertently contacted the ball first and the Patriots recovered and turned it into points. That is something that he's been able to do, is help them on special teams during the preseason. And certainly if you're a running back who's not going to see a lot of playing time on offense, you have to be an adept and contributing special teamer. Otherwise, you're going to have, let's say, a 7th or 8th or whatever it is wide receiver leapfrog you there. So, that result today of Turbo not getting, not having a clean sheet could negatively affect him. Jonathan Ward, the backup to the backup running back, had a really nice screen for a touchdown today. I mean, that's not going to put him on the roster, in my opinion, but just goes to show too that all these guys are, a lot of these guys are NFL players who can make NFL plays, especially if they're going up against backups like they are in this 3rd preseason game. And the Patriots played absolutely nobody for the most part. There were a handful of guys, but for the most part, they didn't play many guys. But so they can make those plays, but that's why the special team stuff matters too. So that'll be interesting. But I'm putting Turbo on my roster. So I go to wide receiver, and going into this game, I put 7 receivers on here. I put Neighbors, Slayton, Wandale, Bo Collins, Jalen Hyatt, Little Jordan Humphrey, and Amir Smith-Marset. Now, remember, Bryce Ford Wheaton would have been on this list. He had the season-ending torn Achilles, right? You lose some special team value and wide receiver option there. I really like Montreal Washington. I just don't think he can crack it. You also have guys like Gunnar Olszewski, Dalen Cambry, Juice Wells Jr., Jordan Bly, Zach Pascal, Daquan Felton. A lot of names in that receiver room this preseason. Hyatt playing as much as he did tonight, and then Little Jordan Humphrey playing as much and as late in the game as he did tonight. It calls both of their statuses on and places on this roster into question. I definitely think, though, that they wanted Hyatt to come out the other side like he did with that touchdown to Jameis. I think that touchdown catch from Jameis Winston after the drops he had, I counted 2 of them from Jackson Dart. That was important for Hyatt. And given that he's a draft pick, a guy that they have been always, or they were high on coming out, even though they didn't show much confidence in him last year, I do think, given what their receiver room looks like now, that for now he makes the initial 53. That extra receiver spot, though, with Little Jordan Humphrey, there's a part of me now that looks at, let's say, a guy like Gunnar Olszewski and says, is it going to be Gunnar Olszewski instead of Little Jordan Humphrey? I think, I'm not going to change that for tomorrow's daily news and print. But as I sit here talking to you, you're watching me live adjusting to the real-time information that we're seeing here in person on the field here at MetLife Stadium. Gunnar Olszewski can give you some special teams flex, and as well as, maybe a slot option and reserve for Wandale Robinson. But, Little Jordan Humphrey, I felt like he's a guy who can give you run blocking as well as something in the passing game. So, let's stick with Little Jordan and Jalen Hyatt in that list for now. But again, like I said, that's where you start doing toss-ups and people have different opinions. Tight end, I would go with Theo Johnson, Chris Manhertz, Daniel Bellinger, and Thomas Fedone. Greg Dulcich is a guy I think you could get back on the practice squad. And I view Dulcich as the kind of player where when he's playing against backups, he looks like a starter. And when he plays against starters, he looks like a backup. And there's, listen, that's just talent level and ability level and explosiveness and all of those things. Like, there's a lot of qualities. But, I think Fedone, of course, a rookie draft pick, still developing, certainly has a serious catch radius, scored a touchdown tonight, caught a touchdown pass from DeVito, has ability. You continue to work with him. You end up now with a room with 3 draft pick tight ends in the room, plus the veteran Chris Manhertz. And then I'll close out the offense here, and then we'll take more questions. My offensive tackles, I have 4 of them: Andrew Thomas, Jermaine Illuminor, James Hudson III, and Marcus Bowe, the rookie. So that has Stone Forsythe and Jason Williams getting released. And then at offensive guard, this is just my take. I have John Runyon Jr., Greg Van Roten, Evan Neal, and Aaron Stinney. So that would mean Josh Azudu, Brian Hudson, Jimmy Morrissey, and Jake Kubis all are on the outside looking in. Now, Evan Neal did have a rough game tonight. 4 pressures allowed on 22 pass block attempts, playing right guard, I believe, for the entire first half. He does appear to be a more effective guard than he is a tackle. But I've said this all throughout the summer, and I think you guys probably saw it tonight for yourself better than you've seen it in other places, that when he has breakdowns or bad plays, it's still drive killing mistakes or mistakes that get the quarterback hit, quickly. So I don't know. I mean, do they completely pull the plug there and feel like Azudu has more flex? I think that would be shocking to me. I think they'll probably still go with Runyon, Van Roten, Neal, Stinney as the 4 guards there. But obviously it would be an interesting thing for them to cut Azudu, a former third-round pick. If they do, that would be cutting 2 of the 3 linemen they drafted in 2022. And then last but not least on offense, I have John Michael Schmitz and Austin Schlottman making it at center. Schlottman has versatility, so he plays center, but he also can flex to guard and even maybe potentially all the way down the line to tackle in a break glass emergency. You know, he's willing and able. He played center well tonight. And remember, he was injured for most of last season. They brought him in to be a capable and reliable backup to John Michael Schmitz. And who knows, maybe, you know, if Schmitz struggles early, maybe he even pushes him. So I think that's a really important thing there. All right. So that gets us through the offense in my 53-man projection. So Ken says, Pat, have you bumped into John Mara and or overheard anything he has said about this team? Ken, John has been consistently quiet. I've seen him several times. He is not showing any interest in speaking about this team at all. And I think that is consistent on his part. You know, he said what he had to say after last season, and now he has been consistent about letting this play out. I think that he understands, based on how the last several years have gone, that he can't rush to judgment either way early on. He needs to, like, basically put yourself in his shoes. He has to like a lot of what he is seeing, and especially from Jackson Dart, Abdul Carter, right? Some of the rookies. But he undoubtedly also is aware, because he's had optimism in recent seasons as well. He's aware of the potential pitfalls. So he knows that Andrew Thomas, you know, has been slow played in the rehab, and that there's hope but uncertainty about week 1, what his status is. So John Mara knows how the team has done without Andrew Thomas. He knows that Dexter Lawrence has been slow played with that dislocated elbow, that he hasn't really practiced full. Really, his first full practice on the field in pads was Tuesday. And so, you know, John Mara understands that he has top players, new players who are exciting, that he has a new quarterback room that is showing some life, especially the rookie Dart, the first-round pick that they traded up to get. But I would tell you, knowing John and having talked to him and been around him for so long, he's at the juncture now of, I'm intrigued, I'm encouraged, but it's not going to mean anything until we actually do it. And frankly, I think that the players and the teams, their mantra, their tone, their attitude towards, needing to prove themselves first, I do think is coming from the top. I think that the way that Dexter and Brian Burns and these guys especially have been saying, like, whatever we are on paper, we're nothing until we actually do it. You heard Dexter Lawrence say today on the broadcast with Amazon about Abdul Carter. He said that, I tell him, like, I want to see it and I need to see it first in a game that matters. I need to see it. And that was really interesting to hear him say and reiterate that kind of sentiment, because it's a challenge to Carter, and it's also reflects excitement on the veteran's part. Barb says slide. That's it. Right. So you're referring to Jackson Dart not sliding and trying to beat those defenders, taking a big hit, fumbling the ball. Fortunately for him, he said he only had the wind knocked out of him, and the Giants retained possession due to a penalty by the Patriots earlier in the play, a defensive holding penalty. Interesting note on this play that I actually asked the NFL about, because I was confused why the Giants received the ball at the end of Dart's run. I thought that the ball would have had to come back to basically the original line of scrimmage, and then they would have gotten the 5-yard penalty enforcement from there and advance 5 yards. But the NFL shared with me that Rule 14, Section 4, Article 3 indicates that when a foul is committed during a running play and the run on which the foul occurs is followed by a change of possession, the spot is the spot where possession is lost. So, therefore, this means in that instance, if you're the quarterback and the flag gets thrown on the defense early, you can take off and run knowing that if you fumble it at the end of the play and lose it, it's going to be your team's ball from the spot that which you fumbled plus the penalty on the defense. Now, that was not why Dart did it. It was not intentional. He was not thinking, it doesn't matter if I fumble here anyway. That was not on his mind. But just so you know, the rule says, and I had to look this up, I did not know. The rule says you can take that risk and ultimately not pay the price for it. So I thought that was interesting. I didn't know that rule. Sublight says, I like the unity I see on the sideline. They're all pulling for each other in a way I haven't seen in a long time. Yeah, there are a lot of good vibes around the team. You can see Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson, Jackson Dart. These guys are all a part of those vibes and that intentional rallying around teammates. And so that's definitely intentional and definitely led by team leaders, including the quarterbacks. So you're absolutely right, Sublight. So all they need is some real results in real games to take them a little further and over the hump. That's what they need next. Hunter says, I absolutely agree with that. Seems like a completely different juice of emotions in a great way. Let's see. Hooks says, Joey B, you got the smoke and sweetness mailed to you for winning that trivia last time. It's perfect for pulled pork, chicken, pork ribs, burgers, beef, or on brisket. Also great on popcorn. Popcorn. Look at this guy. Let's see. Yes, prayers up to TJ Moore. As I said, they immobilized his right leg. He was taken in an ambulance to a local hospital, his family following behind. Tony says he can honestly see the Giants winning 8 or 9 games. Tony, if they can keep up getting in the end zone at the same pace with their first teamers against other teams' first team defenses, then I would agree with you. I think I still need to see it in those first couple weeks of the season from the starters against top defenses and against game plans being schemed against the Giants. Once I see that, I'll get more on board with closer to what you're talking about. I'm also, obviously, this is an ongoing conversation and will be all the way up until it happens. But even though Jackson Dart is not perfect, it wasn't perfect tonight, and he made that mistake, obviously, not sliding. By the way, Tommy DeVito had a funny quote about that. He said he told Jackson Dart to slide, and he says, it's a work in progress. I'm trying to help him out a little bit. Seems like the type that's going to learn from personal experience. So hopefully he will take that insight from today and get better from there, but I knew he was okay. So he's saying Jackson Dart is the kind of guy who he's going to take it on his own and he's going to have to learn for himself. And that's what you saw today. But, I think Dart, as I said, Dart's not perfect, but then again, you look at the preseason he's had, and he's checked every box so far that the Giants have asked him to. And you go now into the regular season, and Dart was asked about, having to sit on the bench and maybe not playing for a while. And he reiterated that Russell's the starter and all of that, and he'll support, but he's also going to be ready if the time comes. I'm telling you right now, I don't see the Giants keeping this guy off the field. I mean, I think I wrote it for the Daily News the other day, but I think I think Dable's going to have packages for Dart in the offense right away. I think if Wilson struggles, the acclimation will be quick and the change will be fast. I don't think there's a lot of rope here for Wilson. I think it's if Wilson excels, that he's the guy and Dart's supporting and involved and worked in. But if Wilson struggles with Dart involved in that way, and him continuing to press and say things like he did today. Like anytime I'm on the field, I believe that I'm the best player on the field. Like it's not going to be long before he's their starting quarterback in a lot of different scenarios in which this could play out. Jacob reminds everybody to smack the like and sub button on the way in. Think we'll surprise some people this season. Interesting. Joey B says, guys, 3 games. Okay. Saints, Bears, Raiders, everything else I don't know about. So I think 3 and they win more, I can finally be happy. But until then, 3-win team. Ezeki says, do you think that game by Hyatt gets him cut? Yeah, it's a good question, Ezeki. That's a very good question. We were talking a little bit about this just before. And I believe, honestly, that they're going to stick with him a little longer. I think, Russell Wilson's, he's talked all summer about putting his arm around Jalen Hyatt. Jameis Winston, Jackson Dart, these guys, like it's been a huge talking point about the organization and the players trying to help him and unlock the best out of him. And you did see Brian Daboll shaking his head after the one drop deep ball that hit Hyatt's shoulder pad from Dart in that instance. But, I think that making that play, catching that touchdown, persisting, I believe there's a lot going on there going back to last season with him feeling like he was underappreciated, undervalued, and really the Giants not giving him much of a chance. He asked for a trade during a practice, had to have a conversation with the general manager, all those things that transpired. I mean, the Giants want playmakers. They need playmakers. And when I look at their receiver room, I think they believe that Bo Collins maybe can be the guy that they wanted and needed Hyatt to be. But at the numbers game right now, Hyatt still looks like a guy that they can use in the receiver room if he can give them that deep ability. Now, the one drawback for Jalen Hyatt, if he's going to contend for a roster spot or miss one, is the special teams element, obviously. If he's not going to be on the field a lot on offense and he's not giving you anything on special teams, that's how you get yourself cut. So that's why Gunnar Olszewski is kind of an interesting name. He was a guy who really was kind of pushed out of here last year, but now is back in the fold. And obviously with Amir Smith-Marset gives you some return versatility, gives you some work in the slot, so that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of bodies to consider. I mean, I think people are kind of split I think some people are split on Hyatt, really. Like from talking to fans, listening to you guys, I think there are some people who say, let's give it one more run. And then there's other people who say, like you guys watch a game like this and you say, listen, if he can't be that reliable and explosive deep threat consistently, then he can't be anything for this team. So that could be something, but you and I all know that GMs, and Joe Shane being one of them, like he's going to wait until the last minute to cut a draft pick, especially a first, second, or third round draft pick. So given that the wide receiver room is not exactly absolutely loaded, right? So if they had one more surefire contributor who was going to be on the field week in and week out, then that would push him out. But I don't think they have enough bodies to push him out. But that's just my opinion. It's definitely a relationship between organization and player that is not in an ideal place, hasn't been in an ideal place for the last year, and has been at different places along the way with the Giants. So is he long for the Giants? Like if he makes the initial 53, does that mean he's going to continue to be a Giant for a long time? No, I'm not saying that at all. I do think his time will end here probably in the relatively near future, unless he just explodes like a supernova and turns into the player that they want. Ezeki says, I might even take little Jordan Humphrey over Bo Collins because he had drops too and drops last week also. Yeah, no, interesting. There were a lot of drops tonight. Bo had a couple. Jalen had a couple. Concerning. Yes, the midnight version. That's right. Yeah, I think Tommy ends up on the practice squad if he doesn't leave for elsewhere. A2 says Midnight Pat is my favorite. It was a perfect preseason before that TJ Moore injury. Hope the kid is all right. J Fed says Giants versus Chiefs Super Bowl. Who says no? That would make for an electric season. Let's go. I'm a fan says, hey, Pat, nice game. What are the Giants going to do with the 4 quarterbacks? Do they keep or trade Jameis or try to put DeVito on the practice squad? Well, I will say this. I'm a fan. So, they're talking about having Jameis be a part of the organization. Brandon Brown, man, I mean, it felt like a question he was ready for. Like, hey, there's been a lot of rumors about Jameis Winston. Like, where do you guys come down on that? Brandon Brown looked very prepared for that question, almost like he was expecting it. And he said, we appreciate the interest, but Jameis Winston is a New York Giant. Now, that was interesting to me because usually when teams say something like that, it's their way of saying, yeah, everybody's calling us about Jameis Winston, right? It's like, hey, yeah, I'm picking up a bunch of phone calls right now about this player. That means you could call too. So it'd be interesting to see where that goes. I mean, obviously the team likes Jameis. The Giants organization has been wrapping their arms around Jameis recently. They just launched some, content / PR with Jameis working with Eli Manning, Sean O'Hara, taking a tour around Manhattan. And that is, definitely a sign of both sides embracing one another. But I think that when you've been in this business long enough, when the assistant general manager, Brandon Brown, says, we appreciate the interest, but he's a New York Giant, that could mean they're not going to trade him. It also could be the Giants' way of trying to tell people, you could call us if you want. We'll listen. We might say no, but we'll listen. So I think my answer to you is the Giants ideally would love to have 3 quarterbacks and get something in exchange for one of them. I think it's very clear, though, to me that you look at the quarterback room, and who knows how good Russell Wilson is actually going to be when the lights come on in week 1. But certainly one thing you saw in this game that feels different from previous years is it was like when one quarterback leaves or goes down, like the fact that Jameis was able to come in unprepared for that. It was like sudden change. Jackson Dart gets removed from the game. The fact that Jameis steps right in, throws that touchdown pass, think about how much the Giants have been devastated in recent years where Daniel Jones goes down and then their backup isn't good enough or their backup gets hurt too. And then it goes to the third stringer DeVito, right? Tyrod Taylor in and out, Drew Lock in and out. And so the Giants quarterback room right now is deep and has too many bodies, right, to keep on a 53-man roster. It also, though, has options that if you have to break that glass in the emergency because your starter can't play anymore, you're not rolling your eyes at who you're going to. Now, I thought Drew Lock was better than Brian Daboll did clearly last year. But, remember last year where Daboll skipped over Drew Lock, the season-long number 2, to go to DeVito as the number 3 against Tampa Bay. And, in this case now, the Giants have more options there in a good way to maybe hold the fort down running the offense if something goes wrong. So that's an argument for not trading Jameis, for keeping DeVito on the practice squad if he'll have that once you cut him. So that's an argument for having all of those bodies and all these guys remain in the building. Now, the flip side of that could be, the Giants, if they know there's not room for those guys, and DeVito's at a point in his career clearly where he's trying to make noise to get more of an opportunity to get on the field, and the extra bodies in the quarterback room here reinforce to him that opportunity is not here, right? So in that case, it's like, hey, Daboll is obviously very fond of Tommy DeVito. He skipped over Drew Lock for him. So would they actually trade Jameis Winston and then keep DeVito as the 3 and have those 3 be their QBs, Dart, Wilson, and DeVito? Or ultimately, is this the end of the line with DeVito? It feels like it's the end of the line with DeVito, especially given he barely got any reps in camp at all. Of course, Jameis barely got any reps either. But that's the long way of talking it out, the permutations of where it stands. I'm a fan. I hope that was clear and helped out, but follow up if it wasn't. Joey B with another super chat. Thanks for setting the example, Joey B. I really appreciate you. Joey B says, we can't afford pride here with draft picks. Got to know when to cut a man loose. Hyatt, Zudu, Bellinger even. Bring in real talent and cut the fat. All right, so that brings me to the defense. So thanks for saying that, Joey B, because now I will go to my defense 53-man roster projection. And this is, of course, brought to you by our sponsors, Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, MyBookie, Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, and Salad for Men. Guys, you can see scrolling across the bottom of the screen the codes that you can use to support our sponsors. So it's boomchaga.com. You're going to use Talkin Ball 25. MyBookie, you're going to use my last name, Leonard, as the code for your sign up and your deposit bonus. And Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, you're going to use Talkin Ball. So that's the 3 places you're going to go to support MyBookie for all your sports betting and casino work. Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink to get a nice little kick, lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with this supplement that you can put in your coffee, tea, or water, and also the cold teas that are great for these summer months. And Hooks, Rubs, and Spices is going to make everything taste better on the grill. That nice Texas barbecue flavor. Our buddy and supporter, Jared, owned and operated by Jared. He's a diehard Giants fan, originally from Houston, bringing it right to you. All right, so we head to the defensive 53-man roster projections. Edge rusher, pretty self-explanatory. Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Abdul Carter, and Chauncey Golston. Now, the Giants gave Golston $12 million guaranteed in free agency. The former Cowboy, the Giants don't seem to have been enamored with his training camp, honestly, but they paid him. He has inside-outside flex, has a proven track record of playing, and making plays in real NFL games. So I have him in there. Tamon Fox, Trace Ford on the outside looking in. One thing to keep an eye on here, one asterisk. So Victor Dimukeje, free agent signing, I believe was on the Cardinals last year. He's an edge rusher. He tore his pectoral muscle in the spring. Now, he's not practicing yet, but I've seen him out there on the field doing a lot of rehab work. I don't know how much closer he is to actually being on the field in any capacity. I know the ESPN report initially said in May that it was a 4 to 6 projection. So that would put him like mid to 3/5 of the way through the season or so, potentially as like an early or optimistic timeline. Anyway, I bring him up to say, when you're the Giants with a player like Victor Dimukeje, who is on the non-football injury list with this torn pec, you can activate him off NFI to put him on the 53-man just for Tuesday into Wednesday, and then you can eventually put him back on NFI if you need to, or you can carry him through the 53-man roster deadline on non-football injury on NFI, and then you can activate 2 players like that during the season off of those types of lists. So you could choose to either carry him through on NFI and then activate him sometime during the season, or they could activate him, put him on the active/inactive list for the 53-man, count him as one of the 53, and then later drop him back down. So that's all like in the weeds roster machinations. I hope your eyes didn't glaze over. I hope I didn't bore you with that. My point is, though, there are versions of a 53-man roster where they could put him on the 53-man quickly and then have him on a reserve list again, or they could carry him through NFI on the 53-man roster deadline, but that wouldn't mean necessarily that his season is over. Hope that made sense. Let's see. All right, defensive tackle. So I think my defensive tackle looks different from some other people's. I only have 5 in here. Dexter Lawrence, Roy Robertson Harris, Rakeem Nunez-Roches, Darius Alexander, and Elijah Chapman. So first of all, I think the Giants like Elijah Garcia. So I do think they like him. You also have draft picks like DJ Davidson, Jordan Riley. Of course, there's Jeremiah Ledbetter, Corey Durden. I think Ledbetter and Durden, obvious cuts. I do think Garcia gets cut and put on the practice squad. But honestly, like when I looked out on the field, who's making plays and who gets playing time when and who gets favored, that kind of thing. Like, to be honest, I think Riley is an obvious cut draft pick. And then I think it's between DJ Davidson and Elijah Garcia if you're keeping a 6th, in my opinion. Garcia is a guy they've moved outside and inside. I do think with Lawrence, Robertson Harris, Nunez-Roches, Alexander, and Chapman, plus on the edge, in the edge rusher department, you also have Carter and Golston who can flex in and out as pass rushers. You know, there's a chance, at least based on my 53, that they only keep 5 interior to start. This is also one of those positions, you know, like many positions, that I think the Giants would probably be looking around at waiver claims and seeing what they could add, how they could reinforce it come cutdown day. But those are my 5. And like I said, I'm interested to see what happens with Elijah Garcia. You know, not a draft pick, but a guy I do feel like they like. All right, moving to off-ball linebacker, Bobby Okereke, Micah McFadden, Darius Muasau, and Chris Board. Board has not made consistent plays on defense, but he fills the special team linebacker role that was belonging to Ty Summers before he got hurt and got released. So, you know, I think Deontay Johnson and Demetrius Flanagan-Foles end up on the outside looking in here. I like Deontay Johnson. If it was up to me, I would keep Deontay Johnson over Chris Board. But, you know, my hunch is they want a veteran that they feel like they can rely on in a guy like Chris Board as a special teamer as well as off ball. I could be wrong about that. Maybe they will give Deontay a shot at that role finally. Corner, pretty self-explanatory at corner. I have 5, Paulson Adebo, Cordell Flott, Deontay Banks, Drew Phillips, and Art Green. Spoke with Art Green after the game today. He was, you know, he agreed like he was working hard this offseason, has had a good spring, good summer. He was really tackling well today and played well. He said that Marquand Manuel, the corners coach, his coaching point is 5 steps before you bring the guy down or during your tackle. So essentially it's an emphasis of once you wrap the guy up on the tackle, make sure you take at least 5 steps driving him back. And so that number 5 is just a target that helps you keep your feet moving so that you win that leverage battle and you end up bringing the guy down. So that was what Green told me about what Manuel has told them and taught them. So I thought that was interesting, and it definitely reflected in his strong tackling today. And when I mentioned to him that he tackled well, he said, you know, well, when you look at film of the Patriots, you know they're going to run the ball. So they were prepared to stop the run. So what that would do, if you only kept those 5 corners, that would leave Nick Jones. There's obviously TJ Moore, who was injured tonight, unfortunately, hopefully praying for him. But you had Moore, you had Nick Jones, D. Williams, O'Donnell Fortune, and then Trey Hawkins, Corey Black, also draft picks. So in my roster, I have all those guys on the outside looking in. So that includes draft picks. Fortune made some plays tonight on the ball. That was good to see. He had a rough early going, but he made some plays tonight. So again, remember, anybody that I'm saying isn't on the initial 53 is potential practice squad ads. Most guys who get released in this fashion end up on your practice squad. And then there's a handful who end up getting poached, or not poached, but either poached or they drift into free agency, and then the Giants find a way to bring them back once an injury happens. So that's to keep in mind as well. Finally, at safety. So at safety, Javon Holland, Tyler Nubin, Dane Belton, Raheem Lane. Now, I think when you look at this, Lane and Belton, Lane had been like the first man up to behind Holland and Nubin, with Belton also kind of sharing that first man up at times, right? Almost like rotating in and out of that. Lane was banged up. He got hurt on Tuesday in practice, or, he walked off Tuesday and then he didn't play in this game. But I do believe, like, I'm going to just project it the way they've been playing them. Holland, Nubin, and Lane and Belton making it. So then if Lane, for some reason, either isn't healthy or, isn't available, or they feel like he's got to go on PUP, or, whatever it is, Kavon Wallace would be the next veteran up right behind that. Remember, you also have Makari Page, an undrafted safety / corner. I guess he would probably end up on the practice squad as well, I would see, as well as some of these other corners, like a guy like Jones and Fortune and Black. So the 4 safeties. And then last but not least, the special teamers, Graham Gano, Jamie Gillen, Casey Kreider, with Jude McTamney being on the practice squad, and then being available if and when Graham Gano is no longer the guy. So that's how I see it. That's how I see it shaking out. But of course, interested to hear from you all now, having listened to my 53 man. What do you disagree on? What do you think, like, the number one difference is between maybe the way you see it and the way I see it? Do you have any questions about why I'm taking someone off or leaving someone on? I'll stay in the question queue here in order as promised, as always. But remember, if you want to if you want me to address your comment or question immediately or first, you want to purchase a super chat or a super sticker, and that will rise to the top of the queue. All right. GCN says, Pat, everything has gone too well for the Giants. Regular season will not be this good. We'll see. Put Daboll. Let's see. Will Daboll pull the ripcord at halftime of the Washington game if offense goes nowhere in the first half? Yes, I do think Russell Wilson will have a short leash. What's up, Antonio? Great to see you. GCN said it looked like Moore broke his ankle. I mean, his leg was broken in a different direction, basically in the midpoint. It was disgusting. Yes, we got a ticker now, Joey B. You like it? I hope you like it. Hopefully that's a good reminder for everybody to continue to support our sponsors. All right, let's see. Yeah, I don't know what they could get for DeVito, Antonio. It's an interesting point. You're asking like 5th, 6th. I mean, hard to imagine you're going to get anything, if at all, in a trade for Tommy DeVito. But even a conditional late round pick at this point would be better than letting him go for nothing. DeVito did as much as he could today to make a case for somebody to want him. But again, somebody has to want him, have a need. And then, for DeVito, like I said, leaving here. So DeVito leaving here to go somewhere else makes sense if he has more of an opportunity where he's going. But if he's just going to sit on a practice squad as a 3rd or 4th stringer somewhere else, then staying here is what makes most sense for him. Right? So, all right. Joe says, Pat, how does the practice squad work? How many players and salary, if you have an NFL contract, does it switch if they put you on the practice squad? Yes, you have a practice squad salary that is much lower. It's in the single thousands, and then like per week, and then your active roster salary is dramatically different if you get elevated for those game weeks and goes up to the minimum that it would be for that week based on your tenure. So that really jumps high if you get bumped up for a game. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. Practice squad, I want to say somewhere like 13. But they've increased it in recent years. Is it up to 15 now? Let me see. I think no, so I believe it's 16 plus it can be 17 if you have an international pathway player. So I believe that's the number is 16. GCN says, what if the Giants trade for Brian Robinson? Do they want to trade? If they trade for him, would they trade or cut Singletary, you're saying? I haven't heard anything about that. I don't know if Washington would trade him in division either. Don't hate I mean, I like that player, though. I like Robinson a lot. Joe thinks that was a penalty on the fair catch. If it is not, then every time they push the blocker and the receiver, maybe get a fumble. Yeah, it was a bang play. GCN, yes, the Giants went undefeated in the preseason. He asked me if it's gone this well in the preseason ever for the Giants since I've been on the beat. And yes, actually, they went 4-0 in 2019 in Daniel Jones's rookie season. So some parallels there with Jackson Dart, Daniel Jones, and the feelings of what may come early this season. Joe says, Pat, Scary Terry is making $23.5 million. Washington offered him 24, and he wants 33. Listening to Washington radio station, he may not be with the team, traded or hold out. Yeah, and that's why, listen, I know I keep plugging this, but you guys definitely should go listen to or watch my podcast with JP Finley from down in Washington, covers the Commanders. JP with a really good insight into what the Commanders look like as a team and to why McLaurin's valuable. Also, I think you guys would really enjoy NFC East preview with Nelson Aguilar, former Eagle, as well as Raven, Raider, etc. 10-year NFL veteran, Super Bowl champion. Tell some great personal stories, including playing through pneumonia and making 9 catches for 84 yards in that Super Bowl 52 victory over Tom Brady and the Patriots. But he also breaks down receivers like Neighbors, McLaurin, and explains to me, to you, the viewers, what makes them great, specifically the traits that they have. He also breaks down what makes a good slot receiver and discusses X's and O's. He's very good. And that is the first time I'd ever talked with him on camera, and he's very good, very good. All right, let's see. Joey B says Azudu needs to go. He's been nothing we expected to be since we drafted him. I agree with that. Ezeki thinks Azudu looks fine at guard. And Azudu did not play tonight. Pittsburgh had a trade possibility with Washington for Scary Terry, but Washington wanted too much. Joe says, Pat, Dart has a 74% completion percentage. The team is scoring 30 points a game. If the offense is not working, Dart will be in by game 2, game 5 at the latest, no doubt. Okay, yeah. Chris is being sarcastic here, no doubt. Says, yeah, because we just got Winston for fun. Yeah, no, well, so the reason they added Winston initially, Chris, was, they didn't want to come out of free agency with only one quarterback, because if the draft did not land them their preferred QB, they wanted insurance and a capable backup, somebody that they felt like could be a backup that they could rely upon if needed. But then they did draft Jackson Dart and get their quarterback, and that's why now the quarterback room looks like more of a surplus. GCN says, yes, Pat, slide practice for 8 hours tomorrow for Dart. It looked like Dart's mom was coming out of the stands to check on him. Daboll said to Dart, welcome to the NFL. This is why quarterbacks slide in this league. It was a very Daniel Jones thing to do. You remember how competitive Daniel was, and how they would urge him to slide. He worked on sliding more, but it always that competitive. It was also the same thing as it is with Dart. It's that competition inside of him. It's the desire to dominate the man across from him. And remember, this was a 4th down, so the adrenaline was running high, and Dart didn't want to hear it, man. He said, frankly, like if he was in a pile, he would have gone down, but he felt like he was in the open field, so he wanted to try to make a play. So he clearly does not regret it. Joe Shane, you'll remember, said when they drafted him that Dart made him a little nervous in the Senior Bowl by lowering his head to run like a linebacker over going into the end zone. So this is something that the general manager marked on day 1. Noel says, hey, Pat, I always appreciate you, bro. You too, Noel. Thank you. He says, what do you think about the possibility of a platoon/rotation between Banks and Flott? Yeah, good question. I think, so if you notice, tonight they played Flott and Green. Banks did not play. Obviously, Adebo did not either. So I think that this is trending towards Flott starting across from Adebo, and then Banks working his way in at times, but maybe being in a special teams and then supporting role at corner. That's just based on what I've observed from the team. You can have a rotation, but rotation would be more like you feel confident in both of them to make a play if one is struggling. I don't think if let's say you start Flott in week 1 against Washington, and he's being effective, you're not pulling him out of the game just to get Deonte Banks reps and give Flott a breather. You know what I mean? Like you're either playing him or you're not. So I think it's more like you choose the corner that you feel gives you the best chance to win, and then you go from there more than anything. So that would be my read on that, and that would be my thought on probably how they'll handle it. So that's my guess. I think it ends up starting out as a Debo Flott, but we will see about that. Ricardo looks like he's watching the games. Darius Alexander has been a complete no-show this whole preseason, he says. What do you make of him? Ricardo, this is an important point, and this is why I mentioned about the interior D-line. Are they going to be looking at other teams' cuts and things like that? So, for waiver claims, I believe that Alexander, from what I've seen, he has looked. Now, I've said this all along because it's true. Darius Alexander has looked the part in some of his one-on-one reps at practice. So when they isolate him against one of the backup tackles or the backup guards, like you can see the strength, you can see the athleticism, you can see what the Giants saw when they drafted him and why they were excited. But when he has played in games, when he has played really even in practices for the most part, in full team periods, 11 on 11, it really hasn't shown up. And the concerning part about this is, listen, he's a rookie. So, of course, we don't expect every rookie, especially the later you get in the draft, to be some immediate difference-making impact. He doesn't have anything to work on. We don't expect that. But my concern is that the Giants, I think, are relying on him in their minds to be a serious factor, in the run game on the interior, in the pass rush on the interior. And hopefully it develops into that. But I haven't seen it. And I think Ricardo knows what he's talking about because he hasn't either. Yes, the Giants second teamers look way better than New England backups. Yes. Hunter says, where do you think Micah Parsons and Trey Hendrickson end up? That's a really good question. So here's one thing I threw out before. I can't imagine Dallas would actually do this, but like Micah Parsons and Saquon Barkley, they have a relationship going back to, the Penn State connection. And Howie Roseman is undoubtedly, no question, one of the primary general managers on the phone anytime there is a big-time player potentially available. So you always have to throw the Eagles into the hat, especially because they're in win now, potentially trying to repeat mode. Josh Sweat, they had to let walk in free agency to Arizona. Now, of course, you look at their cap situation. How are they going to make that work? Well, Howie and the Eagles, they work their magic. They know how to kick money down the road. I'm sure they could figure it out for Micah Parsons. I'm not saying the Eagles are going to get Micah Parsons, but I am saying that's the first team that popped into my head based on the way the team operates, Parsons being from Pennsylvania, him and Saquon having a relationship. All of those dots connect. Now, it's more likely, of course, that these guys would get traded not only out of division, but out of conference. I mean, Parsons would be significantly expensive as a trade asset. And if you were a team acquiring him and giving up draft picks to do it, you have to be in a sweet spot. Like, you don't want to be, in the AFC. Like, if you're a Tennessee or a Cleveland and you have to trade a first round pick, for all you know, you might be trading next year's number 1 overall pick, right? You can't do that. So it has to be a sweet spot type of team, a team like maybe the Jacksonville Jaguars are in that, are in there as like they have a new young general manager who took some swings this spring, things like that. So, something off the beaten path, something that Micah Parsons probably wouldn't love from a competitive standpoint, but might like from a, financial standpoint. It's always worth in these types of situations to remind yourself which teams has the most salary cap space to take on those players. Interestingly enough, so the Patriots have the most cap space in the league. An interesting one, though, is the Detroit Lions have a lot of cap space, and they have Aiden Hutchinson, but he's also coming off of that injury last year. And you're hoping you get the old Aiden Hutchinson, the elite top version of himself. But is that what you're going to get? Do you need insurance at that position? You saw how much the Lions defense fell off last year when he was out of the lineup. And now they lost their defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, to the Jets as a head coach. So something to watch there as well. You can tell I don't have a line on this team is calling and this is going to happen tomorrow to this place right now. I don't have that for you. So, at the moment, that's where it stands. Hendrickson, that's a good question. I don't know. Where do you guys think they're going to go? Hendrickson, I would say if he was being traded to the NFC, Trey Hendrickson would probably end up being like a, who could use him? All right, let's see. Yeah, I don't know. That Hendrickson one is weird because I don't really know how the Bengals expect to win without him. I mean, I know they have the offensive firepower. It's interesting, though. Those are kind of parallel situations, right? Both offenses with a quarterback who really knows how to dice up defenses and score a lot of points and has 2 top receivers. So they love what their offense can do and the explosiveness their offenses have. But then they're each screwing around with the money and the potential staying power with their organization of their top defensive players. It's very unusual. All right. Let's see. Good question. I wish I had a better answer for that, Hunter. I need to try to get to the bottom of that. Dillinger says I agree. We need to see how our O-line matches with defenses. Welvin says, Pat, have your opinions on our win total changed? I think it's possible that I might increase from 3 to around 4 or 5, but I don't think I'm going any higher than that. I still need to see this team healthy and scoring points in regular season games to jump on the bandwagon, to jump on board. Now, I have always, through this, all the way through the draft process, believed that Jackson Dart was a player. You know, in the summer, there was a period where in practice, his performance was not opening eyes at all, really, just kind of there. But then once the game started, it all kind of turned up several notches. And I think that if Dart plays and gets exposed enough to regular season games, that his comfort level results in productivity and production, and he can keep the juice going with the team during the regular season, that is how the win total would change for me. But I do think that I need to see the points scored in the games. That's what I need to see. So I don't think I'm going to go higher than 5, Welvin. I was at 3 in the spring. I was at 3 in the early summer. There are definitely reasons to feel more optimistic than I was at those junctures of picking those win totals. But, you know, that said, you know, I think with Andrew Thomas, Dexter Lawrence, Malik Neighbors, these guys with their health and wondering how close to full strength are all of them right away to play and win these games against Washington and Dallas. And ultimately, the O-line and Russell Wilson. What are they going to look like in that first game? Because I could very much see a world where the Giants defense makes some plays against Washington, but the Giants offense doesn't score enough points for them to win. So that is just the number one thing going into week 1. It's run defense. Yes, it's run defense. Yes, it's keeping the penalties down. Yes, it's clean special teams, all those things. It's also Dable game management. But it starts with scoring points on offense. And as we've said, it's Russell Wilson starting, right? Hakeem says people shouldn't be afraid of the schedule. It's a great litmus test. Prove people wrong. Prove everyone wrong. Love it. Hakeem, I agree with you. Interestingly enough, like I think I honestly believe the Giants are the ones that want everyone to know how tough their schedule is in the event that they maybe lose early games, because they want to point at that and say, hey, no one would have done well against this. But I agree with you. It's no excuse. Everybody plays tough teams. Everybody plays tough teams. And it rotates. GCN says, Pat, why did the Giants let all the coaches get interviewed this week? The O-line coach said they could play no huddle quick offense if they wanted to. Yeah, that's just it's a monthly thing. I believe it's monthly they do it with the assistants. And then bi-weekly they do it with the coordinators. And then during the season, the coordinators are every week. So that's just a good way to expose you all, the fan base, and us to like more detailed breakdowns of how they're coaching the players, and they can answer questions about that, and also talk about the roster and what players can do to get better, make the team, all those things. All right, guys, I was told by that security guard that I have 15 minutes from where we sit right now. It's 1:15 a.m. I got to close up shop at 1:30. So I'm going to stay in the queue in order and keep reading through. But if you have something that needs to be answered that you think I'm not going to get to, super chat and super sticker is the way to get to it. Just to be clear about who did not play tonight, to reinforce, the 53-man projections we're talking about for what the roster is going to look like next week. Here are the players. This is in order of their numbers from lowest to highest who did not play in the preseason finale. Brian Burns, Malik Neighbors, Deontay Banks, Russell Wilson, Kayvon Thibodeau. Now, Dalen Cambry was injured. Javon Holland, Daquan Felton injured. Graham Gano, Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, Eric Gray on PUP. Paulson Adebo, Dane Belton, Corey Black. Don't know what that was about. I'm assuming that's banged up. Devin Singletary, Tyler Nubin, Tyrone Tracy, Trey Hawkins, I'm assuming banged up. He is banged up. So is Deontay Banks. Micah McFadden, Raheem Lane banged up. Demetrius Flanagan Foles banged up. Jermaine Terry, tight end, looks like he's banged up as well. So that was tough for him. This is the kind of game players like that need to play in to make the roster. Victor Dimukeji hurt as well. Darius Muasau, James Hudson, Bobby Okereke, John Michael Schmitz, Jermaine Illuminor, Greg Van Roten, Josh Azudu, who was in street clothes, not even in uniform. John Runyon, Andrew Thomas hurt, but rehabbing. Daniel Bellinger, Theo Johnson. I think Theo Johnson has something personal going on. Let's see if Dable was asked about that. I think Theo Johnson has something personal going on because he showed up late to practice the other day. Guys seemed to be paying close attention to him and kind of handshakes and hugs. And then he was not. I didn't see him today. So that's not injury related, best of anyone's knowledge. Chris Manhertz, Rakeem Nunez-Roches, Roy Robertson Harris, and Dexter Lawrence. So those are all the guys who did not play. Gives you a reinforcement of who's banged up, but also who's going to make the team. You think Dable didn't like the no pass interference call on that first incompletion to Hyatt? Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, he still could have easily made a play on the ball too, though. I thought he was a little. I thought he was wishing that a play had been made. Cut Neal and Hyatt. He's not consistent, says Dillinger. Shevsky, love it. Joe says, Pat, Bo Collins has advantage over Hyatt because he went to Notre Dame. In my eyes. Chris says, great half. Our team needs to be great. Half of our team needs to be cut, if not for to make Shane look competent, and you wonder why we are losers. Aziki says, I agree with Joey B. We stick with draft picks way too long, and it drags the position group down, no doubt. And what you're going to see develop here is, and I've said this over the last couple of years, so Joe Shane came in here saying we're going to build through the draft and supplement for free agency. But if you look at the Giants roster, what they are is a team that has had to build through free agency and supplement through the draft. That's because they haven't drafted well enough, especially early on. Got to go to Authentic real quick. Authentic, what's up? I know you've been putting in the work. Authentic says, Pat, what up? Dart has the goods. They laughed when I had him as QB2 in this class. Flex on him, Authentic. Flex on him. I love it. I love it. Hey, remind them. People don't want to talk about it now, right? They don't want to talk. They'll tell you you're wrong then. And then when you're looking at this, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to talk about it. They act like it never happened, right? Let them know. Now, that said, this is still preseason. Now, you and I and everybody here knows that what we see on the field from Dart is very real. Like the playmaking, the toughness, the moxie, the competitiveness, the ability. He's got ability. You can see it, right? The play, kind of the broken play where he steps forward and then makes like an platform throw, finds Olszewski wide open on a busted coverage, and then he gets out for 50 yards on the touchdown drive. Like that, he's making plays. I mean, the receiver came wide open, but like you just love that he makes the play with his legs, but he keeps his eyes downfield. You know what I mean? To Authentic's point, he does have the qualities. He looks like he has the qualities of a guy who can help this team in a big way. GCN says maybe the Giants see Winston as the backup 2-year contract. When Wilson is benched for Dart, Wilson will not want to sit on the bench. Deuce says if Wilson loses the starting job, he will be the guy to go. Go where, though? Pat, what is the weakest part of the defense? D-line, linebackers, or D-backs? I think interior defensive line is the weakest part of the defense. I think that, that needs to be the position group that shows me we won't get pushed around. We will stop the run, and we will not allow runners to the second level at full speed, right? Like that, it sounds like it's obvious and should be easy enough to at least impede a runner enough to do that. And that's, they've done it at times. Other times they have not during camp. It's not consistent enough. They're not good enough at it. They weren't good enough at it last year. All the conversation about bad tackling by the secondary, it starts up front. So that would be my take on that. Dexter Lawrence is excellent, but they need more consistency and high-end play from everybody else in the interior. And they need better personnel there too. Do they have it there? We'll see. Daniel Jones is the starter for the whole season for the Colts. What if the Colts head coach makes him into a good quarterback like Kirk Cousins? Then it'll be another embarrassment for the Giants. Yeah, unfortunate to see Ty Summers hurt and released. Hope he lands in a good spot. All right, let's see. Aziki says, authentic, love your videos and streams. I mainly just lurk, but keep up on the grind, man. Your content is amazing. Authentic is the man. There's no doubt about it. Authentic says, definitely have to check out your Aguilar interview. Yeah, I think you really like it. He's very good, too. I'm looking forward to Nelson doing more episodes with me. And I definitely think you'll probably see him on new shows soon as well. All right. Hunter says, this is why I say pump the brakes based on preseason 2 on Dart. Danny, 2019 preseason was elite, and we know how that ended. But I do think Dart has a lot more upside than he did. Another great chat says, I'm a fan. Thank you. Authentic says, forget Daniel Jones. He never looked this good in preseason, and he showed he had a fumbling issue in his first preseason. Hunter says, Danny went 29 of 34 passing as a rookie in the preseason or something like that. Aziki says, DJ didn't pass the eye test, in my opinion. He had great stats, but it was different than the way Dart looks. It's hard to put it into words, but you can see Dart's poise and just natural look. Yeah. Hunter says, yeah, but let's pump the brakes on Dart. He looks great, but until the real game starts, there's no reason to rush him into the fire. Aziki says, yeah, they definitely look different. Definitely pump the brakes, but they do look different to me. Authentic, you're so funny. Judge the reps, not the results, says Authentic. Dart is our future. He's going to be good. If you can't see it and think it's Daniel Jones, I feel bad for you. No, I mean, listen, Dart does look good. But again, you do have to see it. You do have to see it when the real games begin. There's no doubt about it. All right, let's see. All right, our Hooks, Rubs, and Spices trivia question brought to you by Hooks, Rubs, and Spices. Again, this is Jared, owned and operated by Jared. He's always in our chat. He's supporting us. We're thrilled to have him sponsor us tonight and throughout the preseason, throughout the summer. Grateful for this sponsorship, this collaboration. And we've had some listeners and some viewers ordering Hooks, Rubs, and Spices since we've kicked off this collaboration. We're seeing some orders roll in. We're really excited about that. Can't thank you enough. So we're going to do the Hooks, Rubs, and Spices Giants trivia question. And this is brought to you by Hooks. So we're going to give away, let me see the flavor he said. I think he has an H-Town rub to give away. There's a lot of different varieties that can go on a lot of different types of meats, seafoods, things like that. So it's the H-Town rub that Jared wants to give away today. So here is the question, plain and simple. The Giants had 5 guys listed as returning punts tonight. Can you name them? So first person who names all 5 punt returners in the chat wins this Hooks, Rubs, and Spices spice delivered directly to them. Name the 5 Giants who were listed as returning a punt tonight in their preseason finale. All right, let's see. As we wrap up the chat, yes, he does keep his eyes downfield when things break down. Jodes would look down and run instantly. When that was also partially a Zeke of Daniel getting hit so often, it pulled his eyes down and further and further. But you're absolutely right. Dark does keep his eyes down the field. Plenty of room on the bandwagon, Pat says Big Dash. I love it. Right. Washington without McLaurin and Dallas without Parsons, not the same teams. No doubt about it. Authentic says he thinks the Commanders are going to pay Terry. I know that's how a lot of people down in Washington think. Korean. This guy says, I think Dark can be better than Eli, honestly. So funny. Joey B, Amir Smith-Marset, Gunnar Olszewski, Montreal Washington, Darius Slayton, and D. Williams. Good guess. You got 3 of the 5. 3 of the 5. Thanks for playing, Joey B. Strong effort. Strong effort. Listen, as you guys are planning the guesses, again, it's the 5 punt returners. Reminder, we are brought to you by MyBookie, Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, and Salaretta for Men. You see the codes down there. MyBookie is Leonard, Leonard. Hooks, Rubs, and Spices code is Talkin Ball. And the code at boomchaga.com, where you can start feeling the difference with a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. The code there is Talkin Ball 25. They're kicking me out now, so I got to roll. But let's see if someone can get the answer in before we jet. Ezekiel says Turbo, Smith-Marset, Washington, Olszewski, and Jordan Bly. That is correct. Ezekiel gets it in inside the buzzer. Ezekiel, here's what you got to do. First of all, thanks for playing. Second of all, here's what you got to do. Direct message me on Instagram, PL on NFL. It's the same handle as YouTube. Direct message me your name, your address, and your email. That way I can get it over to Jared from Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, and he will send out that H-Town rub your way to get cooking, literally to get you cooking. Send it directly to your house. Thank you so much. Great job. All right, we'll close on this. Someone posing as Pat Hanlon says, from one Pat to another, keep up the great work. Appreciate that. But listen, this has been a great Talkin Ball postgame live again after the Giants preseason finale here against the Patriots. It was Jackson Dart's first start. We had Tommy DeVito showing out in the second half. We had Thomas Fedone getting in the end zone. Prayers up to TJ Moore, the corner, obviously, who had a pick 6, but then had an injury, sent to the hospital with his right leg twisted up. Really unfortunate to see that. But the Giants finished the preseason undefeated. Jackson Dart challenging for early playing time, and you all making this a fantastic preseason, fantastic August. Really excited about what we have in store coming up down the pike. We'll keep you updated on our live chats. I'm actually going to take a small break the week of cut week just to reload for the regular season. So we'll probably go live once more, either maybe on Monday, perhaps, prior to me taking off to vacation. If we don't, we will definitely be live on September 1st, and we will come out raring and blaring and ready to go for week 1 of the NFL season. There will be plenty more content going up on the channel here on NFL on YouTube, and can't wait for what we have in store from episodes online now. Nelson Aguilar, JP Finley, Calvin Watkins, and more coming. We'll have Benny Fowler jumping in. Joey B says, Pat, week 3, my birthday cigar and swag, where I'm going to start watching Art Stapleton. You are so funny. Authentic says, going to run this show back from the top. Nice catching you live, Pat. Be in touch soon. Look forward to that, Authentic. Look forward to seeing you guys all next time. This has been Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News and the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast. See you guys next time.